The Industrial Revolution in Great Britain was caused by an enormous supply of coal and iron ore. The introduction of coke-smelted ore in the iron industry led to the new inventions of steam engines and railroads. Before the Industrial Revolution, British smelters and manufacturers used charcoal-smelted iron. By the early 1700s, however, Great Britain almost completely used up its hardwood forests, and by the mid-1800s, normal timber supply went down as well. Manufacturers had to find an alternative source of fuel. Coal was cheaper than charcoal, more abundant, and heated a larger volume of iron at a time. Between 1709 and 1713, Abraham Darby heated coal with the absence of air to make coke, which burned longer and harder than normal coal. However, manufacturers complained the coke-smelted ore was very brittle and difficult to shape. In 1750, Abraham Darby II improved coke and made coke-smelted ore easier to work with, and by 1760 coke smelting spread through Great Britain. Iron-making techniques improved, and iron production spread all throughout Great Britain. In 1788, English ironmakers produced 68,900 metric tons of iron, and by 1806 they produced 3 times that amount. There is no subject more important to the country than the success of the iron trade, and whatever cause may tend to affect the position to which we have once attained, it cannot be but a matter of general interest. H. Scrivener, 1854. More improvements to the iron industry were grooves and rolling cylinders, and Henry Quartz improvements to the putting furnace in 1784. In the 1720s, grooves were made in iron rolling cylinders that allowed manufacturers to roll iron into different shapes. In the putting furnace, coke-smelted iron was heated to a paste, and a puddler used the rods to stir the iron until all the impurities were burned away. The purified iron was then rolled into the desired shape. With all these improvements to iron and the iron industry came new technical difficulties, which in turn led to new inventions. For example, coke-smelted ore required a more intense flow of air through the furnace. James Watt's steam engine solved the problem in 1763. Steam engines were used the most during 1885 and 1914. They were first applied to the threshing process and to drainage pumps. They were thought to be invented by Hero of Alexandria. He was a Greek in about 300 BC, but there is no evidence that he ever created such a device. There were many other designs, but the first was created in 1698 by Thomas Sabre, who was an English military engineer. He used Dennis Poppin's pressure cooker as a basis. They were used for locomotive trains and steamships. They were less favorable for automobiles because of the 30 seconds they required to develop enough pressure. Steam engines converted energy as pressure and steam to mechanical forces. Around 1712, Thomas Newcomen, who was an English blacksmith, invented the atmospheric steam engine. It used a force of atmospheric pressure. The engine pumped steam into a cylinder which was condensed by cold water. This created a vacuum inside of the cylinder. The pressure moved the piston up and down. He also built an engine that pumped water out of mines. James Watt was a Scottish inventor and mechanical engineer. He was working on repairing a Newcomen engine when he started to make several improvements. The major improvement was a condenser that could be cooled as the cylinder heated up. He was not wealthy enough, so he sought out John Roebuck, who was a factory owner, in order to pay for the new inventions. Roebuck soon went bankrupt, and when this happened, Watt went to Knapty Bolton. Bolton then acquired the patent rights. Watt's design was now the major design for the steam engine. Although steam engines were helpful, there were frequent boiler explosions. They were also very heavy and could collapse bridges because they were designed for horses and carriages. Steam engines were also used for trains. Trains were the fastest and safest way to travel. The steam engine was funded by Samuel Humphrey and built by Richard Trevethan. It was designed for a road, not a railway. Robert Fulton, who was a man often given credit for inventing the steamboat, said, "The American dream of rags to riches is a dream for a reason. It is hard to achieve. Were everyone to do it, it wouldn't be a dream but would rather be a reality." Another possible inventor of the steamboat was John Fitch, who successfully tried to run a 45-foot steamboat on the Delaware River. He later built a larger steamboat to hold more passengers. In a letter to Joe Barlow, who was a writer, Fulton describes his voyage to Albany and back to New York. He then stated that the power of propelling boats by steam was now fully proved. August 22, 1807. The railways started around the 1700s, but they were only for bringing the product out of mines such as coal. The railways first boomed in Great Britain in the 1840s once engines were created. For the 1850s, they had trains that carried people and goods 30 to 50 miles per hour. The railways became popular at first because people preferred it for their transportation. However, canal travel was still the favorite way to move goods until the steam engine was invented by James Watt. Once the steam engine began to be used, turnpike trusts, canal operators, and horse breeders were put out of business. Steam travel made railroads very popular, and tracks were laid out all over Great Britain. However, many of the wealthy landowners did not allow the railroad companies to lay track on their property, so detours had to be made. By the 19th century, almost all of the railway construction was driven by commercial interests. In America, railways became very popular. For example, prior to 1871, approximately 45,000 miles of tracks were laid, and between 1871 and 1900, another 170,000 miles were laid. The first transcontinental railroad was finished on May 10, 1869, and by 1900 another 4 transcontinental railroads were built in America. Contributing to these major railways, many small railways were built connecting cities or state borders, and mostly all of these were built by the owners and without help of government loans.